Walking without skin. Managing adversity with vulnerability.
Pain is wrong, every inch of my heart like an open wound. I can't go on, I'll drown if I don't stop the bleeding soon.
Diagnosed with terminal cancer at the age of 30. They gave me 8 weeks to live. I strive every day to be a kid.
Where can I find some protection to prevent this ongoing infection? I'm walking without skin. Walking without skin.
You are listening to Walking Without Skin, the show where we encourage our guests to be vulnerable, to share their voices with authenticity, to tell their stories from the heart. We will talk about hope and recovery, about overcoming loss, changes, challenges, and adversities. We will walk without skin.
How will I know when it's safer? When every step feels like sandpaper. I'm walking without skin. I'm walking without skin.
And here is your host, Lois Wagner.
Hi, I am Lois, your friend for forgiveness and the creator of Walking Without Skin. I have a book with the same title, Walking Without Skin. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Stayc Simpson from Miami, Florida. Hi, Stacey.
Hello. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on this. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. My first question to you is Stayc. Please explain the spelling of your name.
It's Stayc, and actually I changed it when I turned 18 because my nickname as a teenager was Stay. I didn't like being called Stace, which is typically what Stacy gets shortened to. And so my best friend and I were Stay and Trey. And one day I added a C to it and I thought, okay, that is actually phonetically the way it's supposed to be spelled. Why did we never think of that? And actually my parents love it. They think it's pretty smart. So that is it now. So
Great. So thank you, Stacey. So Stacey is the CEO of Gymagination, providing movement education programs for children. She is also the CEO and host of PageantryNOW, which interviews pageants title holders from all over the world. And she interviewed the South African Miss Universe of 2019. Stacey is also an ambassador of heart failure for the American Heart Association. She is the winner of the President's Call to Service Award for over 15,000 hours of community service to the organization that she has served. Looking forward to hearing more about all of that. Stacey, before we get to hear about that, what do you understand by the term walking without skin?
actually it's kind of curious because I thought about that, but I realized that when you walk without skin, you're walking without coverage, without having anything to hide yourself inside. It's being able to go deeper inside of whatever's underneath or what should be underneath, wearing your heart on your sleeve kind of thing. So that's the way I look at it. So
that's perfect. Now, you've got lots to share with us. So let's just start with the pageantry work. Tell us a little bit about what you've done, what you've achieved, and that banner hanging over the back of your chair.
I am the reigning Ms. Achievement World. I represented the United States at the International Pageant in July and won the international title. And this title is about beauty from the inside out. Really, truly kind of what your whole show is about is that there are lots of things that we think beauty are, but seldom do we ever think that beauty is the magical things that you do within your lifetime. And I am super excited to be able to showcase the things in my show, Pageantry Now, I always say changing the world using a crown and a sash, but that really is what it is all about. For me as a title holder, it's about being able to really have an impactful moment, even if it's just locally, then locally changing my world, but hopefully to be globally, be able to make changes and be able to help the world. And as you said, I interviewed Zosie Tunzi, and as she says, for women, that we should be taking up more space. And that is absolutely one of the goals that I work towards as well, is being able to make sure that I am taking up more space and that people see that women are powerful creatures and should be doing more. And I think that that's really what pageantry should be about. Typically, you see a title holder get crowned and then you don't see anything until they crown their successor. And there's 364 days that happen in between that, where these women are, and men now are in pageantry as well, but really trying to change what we do and do lots of community service. And that's really where all of my hours of community service have come from, and then working with different organizations that I've worked with. I started in pageantry when I was 16 after being punched by my father in the face and having to have reconstructive surgery to put my face back together. And I have autism. And so I really didn't know how to navigate the world. And my mom put me in a pageant after that accident to kind of raise my self-esteem and hopefully teach me how to be able to navigate it, talking to people and having conversations with people and being on stage. Although maybe it wasn't the right idea at that particular moment in my life, it really has been what has enabled me to really have a bigger opportunity to interact with people and be okay with speaking in front of large crowds. The largest group of people I've spoken in front of is 50,000, which I think is pretty fantastic. So,
wow, where was that?
It was at the Disney Marathon, so at Disney World, and I got to speak and tell my story to the entire group of people that were doing the marathon. So it was very, very cool.
Now, what is your story?
My story is very multi-leveled. I come from a background of sexual, physical, and emotional abuse as a child, which is very, not a difficult story. It is a difficult story to hear. I think now I've gotten better at being able to tell it. And then going to being diagnosed with terminal cancer at the age of 30. They gave me 8 weeks to live on September 11th, 1996. And that's generally where I start the story, because that's a little bit more digestible than what happened as a child. And then additionally, having 2 other kinds of cancer. 2008, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. 2010, I was diagnosed with skin cancer, as well as heart failure at the same time. And then in 2011, I was hit by a truck riding my bicycle, training for a triathlon. So yeah, those are like my things, I guess.
And here you are talking to crowds of 50,000 people.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I tell my story. What really motivated me was being diagnosed with my terminal cancer. September 11th, 2001 was my 5-year anniversary. And that was when I decided that I'd been truly given a gift. And then I started actually working with different cancer charities. And the first people I ever told that I was terminal were complete strangers. I'd never told any of my family. I hadn't told any of my friends that I'd only had 8 weeks to live. I didn't tell my business partner. I was just, I guess I don't want to say I don't believe I was in denial. I believe that I was just trying to put the most positive thing forward and say, yes, we're going to just deal with this, and being very actively involved in going to the next step, which to me was never dying. The next step for me was just, okay, how do we fix this and go forward? But the first time I ever said I was terminal was to a group of people that I had never met. And I found it very freeing. And that was what made me start doing lots of appearances and then competing in pageants again, because I had stopped competing when I was 21. So at 35, I started again. Crazy.
So how did you fix it?
That is a great question. So we actually did a trial protocol, meaning that it was not FDA approved here in the United States for use. And the doctor said to me, he said, we'd like to try this and see if it works. Otherwise, we're going to go back to what they usually use. It was a different mixture of chemotherapy and radiation. And within 4 months, the tumors were gone, which was pretty phenomenal, because I had a huge tumor that was the size of my hand attached to my heart. And then the other tumor went from the tip of my left shoulder, wrapped around my neck, and had actually moved my trachea over.
And then the tumors just went away, or were they operated?
They just went away. I have never had lymphoma again. They were gone.
Wow. So is this treatment now FDA approved?
Yes, this is now actually the protocol they use. There's a 98% cure rate using that particular protocol, which I think is phenomenal. I was one of those people that took a chance, and now my life really is given to science, because I was also, with my heart failure, flash forward to 2011 when I got hit by the truck. My heart started to fail with heart failure, and my percentage of my heart working was 10%. And the doctors wanted to give me a transplant. And then one of the young doctors said to me, hey, have you ever heard of stem cells? And I said, well, I don't have cancer. I've got heart failure. I'd heard about stem cell therapy for people with cancer. And he said, we actually have a program here, a research program that is on cardiac stem cells and regrowing your heart and making it work correctly. So in 2014, I was the first woman in the study to ever receive cardiac stem cells, because previously the study had been only meant for men. So I'm really excited to be here and be alive because of these two remarkable programs that I went into and said, you know what? My body clearly has a reason. Let's put it forward and see what we can do to be able to change the world.
Well, and now you're passing it forward by talking and sharing and all the community work that you do.
Absolutely. And that's the really biggest thing, is being able to make sure that people know about it, making sure that people are educated. The stem cell therapy is still not FDA approved. We're still working on it. Hopefully, because of COVID, obviously, there was a lot of research programs that went on the back burner because they were working on COVID research. So hopefully we will see maybe FDA approval within the next year. I hope. So, but I'm still alive and doing well. And, my heart function went from 10% to 40%, which I think is remarkable. That clearly is a miracle in and of itself. And although I take a lot of medications, it keeps me alive and it keeps me moving. And hopefully moving forward, I'll get another dose of my own stem cells and be able to feel like Wonder Woman, because I felt like Wonder Woman. It was wonderful. Like, I didn't have any pain in my body. I didn't have any swelling in my body. I was like, yes, this is awesome. Can we get this like an IV drip like once a week? Unfortunately, we can't, but maybe one day. I know in other countries they're doing it now as an IV drip. So
it got you moving and going again. So tell us about Gymagination.
Sure. Gymagination started in 2003. I had previously owned a gymnastics company that was the typical type of gymnastics company where you produce Olympians. And I'd also worked with the Olympic team. And then one day in 2003, a little kid walked in and said, Miss Stacey, are we going to use our Gymagination today? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Yes, we are going to use our Gymagination. And then the whole concept of the program came about, where we were going to specialize in gymnastics for children under the age of 6 and really make them love the sport and have it be fun and have it be really specialized. So there weren't other classes going on at the same time. In a typical gymnastics program, you've got multiple classes going on at the same time, and small children are distracted. And so for me, it was all about educating the child. And our philosophy now, almost 20 years later, is that I want to create great humans. If they happen to learn gymnastics, that's okay. But at the end of the day, I want them to feel successful. I want them to feel proud. I want them to feel, happy. And there's so much education that goes on through movement as well. So we work on, reading skills, math skills, memorization, being able to just highlight the amazing things that children are. They're amazing creatures. And it makes me happy being around them. They play and they love life. And that to me is really what education should be about, is at the end of the day, we are constantly learning. We are constantly, children of the world. And yet somehow in our brain at a magical number, we stop being kids. Or you always hear about children wanting to grow up, but you know what, at the end of the day, I think they've got the blessed life. So I strive every day to be a kid. It's the most important thing to do. You have to laugh. I've laughed a lot through all of the crazy things that have happened to me, and they make my life better. So, and that's what we are. We have music and movement and gymnastics. And then we also have a program called Ninja Kids, which is basically American Ninja Warrior, or a Ninja Warrior like in Japan, but for kids. So that's what we're all about.
You brushed over your early negative experiences and you speak very openly about everything else. Why is that?
I usually kind of open up about the things that are easier to digest, and then I can always go back to the things that happened when I was a child, mostly because it's harder for other individuals to deal with it. For me, I've gone through years of therapy, but to give you an idea, my mother had multiple personality issues. And although they went undiagnosed for most of her life, she dealt with OCD, she dealt with depression, bipolar disorder, and then she was also delusional. And because of the way that she was, it made it so it was much harder for me having Asperger's to be able to relate to her, because I wasn't the perfect child for her. She wanted the perfect girl that was constantly sitting and pretty and always, doing exactly what she said. And I wasn't that child. And so I spent a good majority of my lifetime being punished for what I wasn't being. And now as an adult, I think I had an aha moment about a year ago where I realized she was trying to beat the autism out of me and didn't even know that I was autistic. She just knew that I was not what she wanted as a child. And then to add insult to injury, at the age of 5, a neighbor sexually assaulted me. And he actually sexually assaulted me for almost 4 months every single day. And when I went to her about it, I said, Mommy, he's touching me in a way that I don't like. She's like, I don't care. You go outside and you play, because I was never allowed inside the house because it made a mess. So once the house was cleaned by about 10 o'clock in the morning, I wasn't allowed back into the house until 6 o'clock at night to eat. And I lived in Michigan, which in the United States, Michigan is very, very cold. So even during the winter months, I stayed outside, either in the garage or outside, like playing in the snow for hours. But this gentleman, he was actually an 18-year-old, our next door neighbor, he started assaulting me during the summer and did it until he went off to boot camp for the Navy. And she just said that was what men do, and I needed to accept it when I actually talked to her about it.
You called him a gentleman. I don't think that's the right term.
I'm trying to be nice, but no, that is not right. I mean, in fact, when I saw him later, I've looked him up. I've tried not to be like rude, but now in the age of technology, I've looked him up and I thought, well, I mean, it's like water under the bridge. I'm sure he doesn't really think that anything about it. And to me, I spent a majority of my life thinking that what happened was my fault, because I didn't have a way to be able to express it. And neither was his father. Apparently his father assaulted my mom, and I didn't know about that until I was much older. So it was a family trait. So, but my mom had been sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my step grandfather sexually assaulted me at 11. And that was when I openly said to her, this happened to me. And she's like, that's just what grandfather does. And you just have to accept that men are just that way. And I told her about what had happened with Robert. And she said, well, again, men are just going to do what they want to do. So you've just got to learn to deal with it. So I turned and told all of my cousins, don't spend any time alone with grandfather. Don't spend any time alone in the house. Try to make sure that you've always got one of the other kids with you or one of the boys with you. And then I stopped speaking to him. Like I just couldn't continue to have a relationship, because I even went to my grandmother. I thought, okay, if my mom isn't going to protect me, then I'm going to go to my grandmother and tell her that he's doing it. And she called me a liar and smacked my face. And I was like, okay, well, then clearly I have to protect myself and protect the other kids in the family, because I was the oldest girl. So I knew that I needed to help them. And one of my cousins actually said to me later on, she said, I'm glad that you sat us all down and told us not to be alone with grandpa, because he tried to do it with us too. And they all said that they had opportunities to where they could have been alone with him, and they made sure that there was always somebody with them. So hopefully I protected them. And then fast forward a little bit to the age of 16, I was dating a man because I was 16 and he was 21, so older. He got me drunk. He actually put alcohol in a drink that I didn't realize he had done it. And I passed out and I woke up to being sexually assaulted by his family. So it's been an interesting experience. And then the things that happened with my father happened after that. So I ended up getting pregnant from that particular incident and ended up choosing not to have the baby. I didn't tell my parents. I went and had a termination, unfortunately, but I was doing it for self-preservation because of what had happened to me. And the day that I skipped school, my mom found out, and the school had called my mom and said she's not here. And up until that point, I'd been a straight A student. I never missed school. I was always there. So it was a different situation that they knew something probably was wrong, that I wasn't there. And when my dad got home, he was so angry. My mom had told my dad that I was trying to kill her by doing what I had done, and that I was physically assaulting her. And it actually wasn't that situation. My mom went to hit me and I went, yep, I'm sorry. I'm being an adult now. I'm putting my hands up. You're not going to hit me. Please step back. And she told my dad that I was throwing stuff and trying to kill her. And so he came home and beat me within an inch of my life. So, and that was really, where things dramatically changed as a 16-year-old, where I realized I'd acted very adult-like way before that. I mean, clearly with the trauma that I'd had and not having support and not having people hearing what I was saying and being active about what I was saying to them. I really felt like I grew up way faster than I probably needed to. But this particular incident made it so that I was no longer a child at all. There was just no way. So, and I lived with them until I was 18, and then I moved out at 18 because that type of abuse continued for the next 2 years as well. So,
do you have a relationship with them today?
I do with my father, although I didn't for a while. I went about a 5-year period without speaking to him at all. And then my mother passed away last year. And we had started to see eye to eye when she passed away. It was one of those things where I think as you get older that you start to see your life a little bit differently. I mean, she still was dealing with her mental issues, but for the first time in my life, she said to me that she was proud of me, and I didn't know how to process that. I'd not been told I was loved. We weren't allowed to say, I love you in our household. We weren't allowed to touch each other. And I'm sure that's because of her trauma. But it was very, very, when I met other people's families and I saw them hugging each other and I saw them, oh, I love you, sweetie. It's so good to see you. I was like, why are these people doing this? I just was like, whoa, why, and I think that's probably why I got into a relationship with, a man at such a young age, was because I really was craving, physical affection. I was craving being hugged, and a human can't go on without those things. So I think that, and that's the dark part of my journey, I guess, is the hardest part, is because that's stuff that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to experience it. They don't want to think that, those are happening. I remember I was speaking to a group of young girls, Black girls, and they looked at me like, Miss, wait, those things happen to white people? And I was like, yes, they do. And they went, no, miss, there's no way. And I said, yes, they do. And they're like, it was kind of an awakening for me, and hearing that as well, because it never occurred to me that we think of those things colorly. Like, I never thought of it racially, that would be something that would be a different experience. But I saw these girls that had been very, a more aggressive stance, had always been very, yes, we can do that, miss, we're fine. And then all of a sudden these girls kind of softened, and you saw them just all of a sudden open up. And to hear the discussion, I thought, was extremely important, because no one really talks about it. We sweep sexual assault and physical assault and emotional assault under the rug, and we don't talk about it because it has been taboo for so long. So
with my story, when I was raped, I was so, shocked, obviously, but shocked that it happened to me, because in those days the word rape was never mentioned in polite circles, because it just didn't happen to us. And it was quite an awakening for me as well to have that experience, other than obviously the obvious ramifications. But you, Stacey with a C, you have overcome such incredible experiences. You are a huge inspiration. If you could put one word or one phrase to explain how you had the courage to overcome everything you've done and achieved in your life, what would you say?
Wow. My therapist uses the word resilient. I often say that my Asperger's, which most people think is a deficit, is my superpower. Resilient is a good word, but I do believe that to some degree, the thing that most people think is my disability is the thing that has enabled me to not see the world the same way. And that enables me to think of the next step. You don't deal with the trauma right now, you deal with the trauma later on. You have to deal with the trauma later on. But the most important part is getting to the end, like getting a solution. I'm very solution oriented. We have to have a solution. So how do we deal with it right now? So
how did you deal with it right now?
That's a great question. All right. So with my original sexual trauma, I did repress it. So I didn't deal with it. With the traumas with my family, we were in therapy starting at 16. I didn't trust therapists. I didn't trust most adults. So I really dealt with it with my friends and speaking to my friends and really, I didn't trust people until I was 35. I think that was where I started recognizing that speaking to other people really could be cathartic. And so I think I deal with it by sharing my story, by like being proud and strong enough to be able to say, this is what happened. This is who I am. I don't want to have airs. I want to be as honest as I possibly can, and continuing to have therapy. I'm 55 and I still see my therapist every other week, and that helps me. I mean, we laugh because I'm a therapist as well. even though I don't practice. And he always says half an hour is for him and half an hour is for me. But I think we both need that time, because we don't always get it. I mean, doing what you do, this is cathartic for you as well, I'm sure.
Definitely. It's so important. I always say writing and speaking, because when you write and you speak, you're actually getting it out of yourself and you're sharing it with the universe. And the universe takes some of that pain and some of that angst away from you. So talking, sharing, writing, it becomes less yours. It becomes the universe's problem.
Yeah. And that's honestly that I have found that through, I mean, as bizarre as it is, through pageantry, being up on stages, being on TV, being on radio, doing podcasts, the more that I shed this out and I put that energy into the universe back where it belongs, the less it's in me. And that was really even with my parents. I was very angry with them for a very long time. And then after my original cancer bout, I realized my anger was killing me. My anxiety was killing me. Literally, my body had turned on me because of all of these emotions. And so I told them both, if I continue to hate you, you don't care, but it hurts me. So I am not going to continue to hate you because it's not in my best interest. And I just let it go with love and went, whatever happens from here. So.
Let it go. Fantastic. If you had a billboard.
I'm Elsa. Let it go.
If you could have a billboard on the side of the street, what would you put on the billboard?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know. Like I always say, do you, do you, be you. Or the one that is my other thing is a drop in the ocean eventually becomes a wave of change. Be the drop.
And you more than a drop, you're a whole river.
I'm going somewhere.
Stacey, I've got a program called Brave. The objective of it is to eliminate gender-based bullying, sexual violence. It's a long journey. But what does the term brave mean to you?
Oh, brave is me. I mean, it's any person that sticks up for values. I mean, and I'm not saying like essential values, but values for themselves. I think that, and I also think that brave is also being okay with taking risks as well. To me, I always say that if it's something I'm doing and it feels uncomfortable, it feels like I've got butterflies in my stomach and it gets me really excited, then taking that next step off the cliff is probably what I need to do. If, as opposed to in my head, if I'm going, oh, well, it's this or it's that, or, it's logic based instead of emotion based, then, I mean, obviously you're brave if you fight in front of people, or if you take a moment to defend other people, or you're brave if you take responsibility for your own actions. You're brave. I mean, there's so many different, it's just taking risks, being real, taking ownership. I mean, there's so many things that come with that word. So I don't know. That was not very specific, but
no, it's great, because what is brave? Everybody has a different definition, so that's great. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, best piece of advice for me was just remember that in business, I hate saying in business, but in business, that you have to remember that, especially dealing with children, that you are taking somebody's two most important, most valuable things. You're taking their child and their money. So make sure that you are doing both things equitably. And so my whole business space is built around making sure that the kids are happy and that the parents feel that they are getting their money's worth. You know, the kids are not just sitting and that they're actually doing and learning and having fun. And then I don't know about advice as in the real world outside of business, but I always go back to just being authentic. Like, I think that is, I've heard it over and over and over again. If you're trying to be somebody else, then that isn't helping you. I mean, and in a world with Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everyone's trying to mimic everybody else's behavior, you start to lose yourself. So I try to be okay with being authentic and not trying to be like anybody else, which I think is kind of, you know, an oxymoron that I compete in pageants, because I know I'm not like other people that are in pageantry. So I'm blessed that I won this title, because I remember thinking after when we were waiting for results, I was like, if they're going to go with the classic, typical, you know, title holder, then I'm probably not going to win. And I said, but if they want something quirky and strange and kind of not your normal thing, but I'll do lots of amazing things, then I'm your girl. So I guess they liked that. So I'm really blessed to have that opportunity.
Well, congratulations. You definitely deserve it. Is it possible to share with us one story, one experience that you've had with a child or with somebody that's really touched your heart and maybe even changed the way that you do your business?
I think the moment when a child walked up to me and said, you know, Miss Stacey, I want to be you.
Oh.
And recognizing that a young child mimics my behavior and wants to be like me. And then I thought, well, okay, well, what does that mean? Because I asked her. She's a teenager now, so she's actually starting to work for us. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she goes, I love your personality, but I think I want to do what you do. I want to, you know, help young kids and make them feel good about themselves and give them something to do and it be positive. So not just something to do just because it's an activity, but something that's positive, that has a lasting change. And I thought, okay, a 9-year-old shouldn't be able to tell me that, like articulate that so cohesively. And that was where I realized that this was, you know, a longstanding thing. I mean, I'd been teaching for many years before that, but that was really where I felt a large amount of pride. And previous to that, you know, we'd had incidents where the anesthesiologist, I've been teaching for almost 40 years. So the anesthesiologist that put in, I have a pacemaker defibrillator. And when they put the pacemaker in, she walked in, she goes, "Hi, Miss Stacey." And I went, "How do I know you? Do I have your child?" She goes, "Nope, I had you when I was 6.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like, mind blowing. At the beginning of the pandemic lockdown, I was having problems with my heart. We had an ambulance come, and the ambulance lieutenant at the fire station, as he's rolling me into the ambulance, he's like, "You're Miss Stacey." And I went, "Pardon me?" And he goes, "I had you when I was a kid." And I thought, okay, what are the chances that randomly, I had a student when I taught in Dallas for 10 years, and I had a student walk in and go, "Hi, Miss Stacey." And I said, did your older child come to us? She says, "No, I did. This is my 2-year-old. We heard you were here and we came here because of you." And what that legacy is mind blowing. And that's really, to me, that is what this is all about for me. These lives that they come seeking me, somehow the universe brings them to me, and you know that's forever, like forever. So.
And it's not only those kids that you've had in your various programs, it's also the 15,000 hours of community service. I mean, there must be at least 15,000 people who know who you are and are grateful for you being in their lives.
I hope. I mean, you know, I that is really my mantra, though, is a friend, I've told this a couple of times, but one of my friends in 2010 had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she wanted me to take care of her. And I said, of course, I will greatly help you. She says, we're going to beat this. I'm going to beat this. I'm like, no problem. I am here for you. I have done this, so I will be there to support you. And a couple of days before she died, she said to me, Stayc, what would you want to hear at your funeral? And I was like, I don't know. I've never thought about that. And she said, seriously, I need you to think about that. I'm like, I've never thought about that. And she's like, well, think about it and let me know. And so the next day I said to her, well, I would want to know that I had changed a life. And she looked at me and she goes, you did. And she died 2 days later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so that moment really propelled me into making sure absolutely that everything I do is changing a life. Absolutely. Always.
Yeah.
I live her legacy every single day.
You're an amazing individual.
Thank you.
How can people reach you?
The best way to find me is at Ms. Achievement World on Instagram. So it's MS Achievement World. And you can also find me on Facebook there as well. Or you can always look me up at PageantryNOW on Instagram or on Facebook as well. So those are the easiest ones to be able to find that are easy to spell.
Any last words of advice you have for the youngsters out there?
You know what? Just being you and don't ever regret it. Go out there and live whatever your dream is, whatever that thought is that you think is totally unattainable. I absolutely tell you that it is attainable. I know that sounds, and people give advice and you hear that over and over again, but if you believe it, if you dream it, you can do it. And I have, and I know you can too. You just have to remember that you have that magic inside of you as well.
Well, you certainly prove that you can overcome anything.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us. I think your message is so important and you're doing such great work in the world. So thank you. And
thank you for being a blessing and the opportunity.
You're welcome. And I invite all of our listeners to contact me on walkingwithoutskin.com. You can get a free coaching session to find out where you are on your journey of life. And I invite everybody out there to fly free. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you for listening to Walking Without Skin. We would love your feedback, opinions, suggestions, and ratings. Please share this podcast far and wide to encourage more people to share their stories with vulnerability and authenticity.